Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. This is the final in our summer series on emotional intelligence, and we're focusing today on building relationships that build your career. So we know that lots of you will be more than confident that you can build relationships, but there's a real art and skill to building the right relationships in the right way that allow for that career progress. So we're going to hone in on that specific angle. So Pam, why is this such an important topic then? Why do relationships matter so much when it comes to career progression?
So I think relationship building is probably one of the most important parts of emotional intelligence, or at least one of the core parts of it, because it underpins everything from team performance to how you're going to influence stakeholders. And I suppose if you want to lead effectively and be more trusted and progress, you need to be intentional about how you connect with others and be able to recognize the different types of relationships that you need to have. Because as you start moving upwards in your career, you can't be friends with everyone. And I think that's where relationships get tricky, because you need to build strong relationships with people, but how you go about that can look quite different.
Yeah, and I definitely see this pattern where people, and I probably think I was like this actually in my career, your peers and colleagues, the people in your immediate team, the people that you are on project teams with, where you have that regular reason to interact with people, you can be quite good at building relationships in that circumstance, but building other relationships outside of those natural opportunities is actually a slightly separate skill set, I would say. And it's so important because it's the type of relationships that mean you have influence without the formal authority. It's the type of influence that mean that stakeholders have confidence in you, and that it's easier then to navigate things without everything being a battle or disagreements coming to the surface that can halt progress on things. So it's such a crucial skill, isn't it? So should we start with some myth busting?
Yeah.
We've got 3, haven't we, that we've picked out that we think are some of the myths that kind of stop people from this strategic approach to relationship building.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the first one is going to be that good work speaks for itself, because the reality is that people can't advocate for work they haven't seen or experienced. So I think that's a really key one.
It really is. And it's definitely something where you have to have the relationship around the work that you're doing and for people to understand what your contribution is. So people feel like if they do the work, that will be enough to make the progress. And the reality is you have to build the relationships and you have to communicate what your contribution has been. Going back to our episode on how to articulate your impact would be a great one for those of you in that boat, because you have to build that skill of building relationships that showcase your contribution if you want to make progress.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think that probably links in quite nicely to myth number 2, which is I don't have time for office politics, because the reality of that is choosing to disengage from office politics, choosing not to get involved in those conversations doesn't make it go away, but it does leave you without influence in really key situations, doesn't it?
This was so me. That was me. And I used to be, I don't want to get engaged in any of that. I'm not interested in any of that. But it's exactly as you said. When I stepped away from being willing to engage or understand, what relationships are there, what alliances are there, how do decisions get made, I didn't have the understanding to be able to have the influence that I wanted. So yeah, I absolutely relate to that one.
Yeah. And then the third one, which is probably my favorite one, is that networking feels fake and manipulative, because the reality of that is that building strong relationships is about being useful, consistent, and interested, and definitely not about being transactional.
And again, if I reflect on my own career, and I imagine many of our listeners will feel the same, I was good at networking internally, I would say, within the organization that I was in. And I know we've spoken about this before. I was terrible at considering relationships more broadly. So those things that didn't come up in the particular projects or the things that I was involved in, the things that were broader within the industry, I didn't try and build or maintain relationships with recruiters. Yeah, I was just literally, I was the epitome of, I just want my work to speak for itself. I haven't got any time for office politics and networking. Ugh, hate the sound of that. Yeah, I fell for all of them when I was employed. So if that's you when you're listening, don't feel bad. Plenty of people will have those same perspectives. So if people are relating to it, Pam, where do they go? Let's not wallow in the negatives. What can people start to do if they want to build relationships that will support building their career?
So I think in terms of thinking about how you can start building relationships, I think it's about thinking about taking that more strategic approach. So looking at like where you are now, what relationships are important, and also looking at where the gaps are. And the gaps might not just be from a relationship perspective, but the gaps could be in your own development around building relationships, because a lot of people really struggle with networking, for example, because everyone thinks networking is this big scary thing where you have to go into a room and speak to people that you don't know and do some kinds of fake sales pitch, and everybody's all fake. And actually, in reality, networking can look completely different, and networking can be really easy, and networking can be quite fun and can allow you to create some deep conversations and build stronger relationships with people. But you need to be really intentional about it. So I suppose the first thing you can do is to start mapping out the influence and looking beyond job titles and identify who actually shapes the decisions within your organization to start with. Because I think you can look at relationship building, like generally, you can look at networking, you can look at all of these different things. But I think there's so much that you could cover, it's easy to get overwhelmed. So I think if you just start small and you look at, right, okay, right now, where I am within my organization, who actually shapes the decision making? Who can I start to build relationships with right now? And I think if you start small and you start thinking about what is immediately in front of you, then you can build that out and you can grow that. And by doing that, you'll also grow your confidence around that as well. If you take this on as a big task to start trying to create relationships with 50 new people, it's not going to work.
And I think that's such good advice. And I'm reminded of a coaching conversation not so long ago from someone who realized they had an opportunity because there's an incoming CEO. So they don't report directly into the CEO, they report to that next level. But they recognized actually this person is coming in. I've got quite an appetite for change. They've been brought in to deliver change. I want to get on the front foot and start to consider building that relationship with that CEO from early doors. So I think these are the types of things that you can then start to be brave about, but only once you've taken that time to consider what relationships do I need to build, what's going to be really beneficial.
Yeah, and also as well, just thinking about your own development within that as well, because it could be that you need to develop relationships with people that are sitting a level or two above you, and that might not feel comfortable for you. So that's where you might need some coaching around that. That's where you might need to really flex your communication muscles and really think about how can you communicate with these people? How can you build that stronger trust? How can you be more visible to them people in the right way? And I think when you start thinking about it initially, it can feel like a huge task, but when you just break it down and just look at taking that first step, which is to identify who are the right people to start building those relationships with, that can just really help you to start thinking about how you move forward. Because when you identify that first person, you might think, oh, actually, I'm probably pretty terrified to speak to that person, or I've got nothing in common with that person. Where would I even start? How would I make small talk with that person? And I'm just talking from experience, because these are things that have gone through my head when I've needed to build relationships with either more senior people than me, or different stakeholders and things like that. And it's human nature that you just go, oh, yeah, I need to do that. But it feels so difficult because, and then that's amazing, because once you say it feels difficult because, then you can go, okay, how do I get around this? And it could be that you need to do a little bit of research. You might need a little bit of coaching. You might just need to take the plunge and just have a conversation, because I think we forget people are human at the end of the day. And most people are open to a bit of small talk generally to get a conversation going. But I do think it's definitely worth considering from your own development perspective as well.
And a really simple tip that I would never have thought of when I really needed it is to give first. We talked about this when we did our episode on networking skills, and to look at how can I offer something to that other person rather than appear to be somebody who's wanting something from them. And one of the simplest ways to do that with senior people is to give positive feedback, because people at a very senior level very rarely get positive feedback. So whether it's a presentation they've delivered that you've heard, whether it's a report that you've read and you've taken some insights from it, whether it's a communication that they've put out, if there is a genuine and authentic thing that you've seen or heard that you think something positive about, then actually just saying that can be a start point, because those people won't get to hear it that much. And actually, if you then become known as somebody who is a consistent positive presence, that in itself will start to build your reputation, and it will start to put you on the radar of some of those people that you might then want to go on and build stronger relationships with.
Yeah, I love that, because I think the sooner you can do that and start moving forward, then the sooner you're going to be able to build those stronger relationships. So, in terms of like where people are at and thinking about where they are currently in their relationship building journey, is there anything that people can do to get clear on where they stand now, and any reflection questions that they could use to start thinking about what they need to focus on?
Yeah, and we'll pull these together into a download that you can access from the show notes. But to cover some of the key questions to ask yourself is, first of all, who are the 5 most influential people in your world of work? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is your relationship with them as of today? And it's not unusual that when you identify people who are really influential, and I say in your world of work, meaning not just necessarily within your organization, but could be people within your industry, within your sector, within your particular function in other organizations. So who is there that's influential? Whose radar is it going to be beneficial for your career for you to be on? And then 1 to 10, how strong is your relationship with them now? And you'll expect that probably you're going to have lower scores with these, because if you're listening to this episode and recognizing that you need to build this skill, then you are going to have some growth to have in this area. But it just really helps to map out a start point of whose radar would I want to be on and where is it right now?
Yeah, I love that. And I think another question that you could ask as well is, and this is probably one of my favorite ones, is are you avoiding any difficult personalities instead of learning how to work with them? Because I think that is so key. And when I think about my own career as a leader, like in those early days, like I would run a mile from those difficult personalities, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, like, how do I deal with this? Okay, I can't deal with this today. I'm too busy. And in the long term, it would make the situation worse. So I think that is a great question. If there's anybody in your team where you're thinking, yep, you're a difficult personality, it's okay. What can you do to start understanding them and how they work, and how can you create a better relationship with them and learn how to work with them better? And it can be so rewarding to actually get under the skin of someone that you find particularly difficult and be able to turn that around and create a really strong relationship with them.
I heard a great quote around this, which is to frame it not as that's a difficult person or that's a challenging person, but that's a person that I find it difficult to build a relationship with, or that's a person where I find our relationship challenging, because you create some then mental and emotional distance from labeling that person as difficult or challenging. And that can then help to start to consider. And that's such a confronting question to ask yourself of, oh, who am I avoiding? Who am I intimidated by? Who do I find difficult? Who do I find really challenging? But when you do it, and then just pick one of those people that it would be valuable to have on side, and then just start to consider, how can I change my approach in order to build. And again, you're not expecting it to go from 0 to 10 overnight. You're expecting it to just chip away at it bit by bit when you're intentional about that relationship building. But you've got to start from acknowledging what you're avoiding at the moment.
Yeah, I love that as well. And I think a final question from me would be around thinking about where your relationships are built on real trust and where things are more surface level. Because I know I found that a lot of my work relationships are very surface level, and it can be quite hard to deepen those relationships, because in some ways you do need to be a little bit more vulnerable and you do need to put a little bit of extra work in. There's not always time to do that, but I think if you can almost look at who have you got relationships with at the moment and start to analyze, how deep are these relationships? Could they be deeper? What would I need to do in order to really deepen and strengthen these relationships? And that again can make such a difference.
It really can. And I think that's probably one of the key messages. We'll put the download with all of the questions in the show notes. But I think one of the key messages from this is to pick one relationship that you want to build, one person that you would benefit from being more influential with, and to just start small, to just consider what one step could I then take to start to build that relationship. And that can be as simple as giving them that positive feedback, or asking a question, or inviting them to have a conversation. But just start small, know whose radar you want to be on and why it's going to benefit you and your career, and just experiment, just go for it. Because if you've got those good relationship building skills with the teams that you're naturally in contact with, there's no reason that you can't apply that to these other relationships. So do go and download from the show notes. Do let us know what comes up from those reflections for you and who you're going to work to build a relationship with. We really hope that you have enjoyed the summer series. We felt like it's given us some great opportunity to delve into specific aspects of emotional intelligence. But as ever, if there are topics that we haven't covered that you would benefit from hearing on, then please do drop us a message, let us know. And we'll be back next week when we're back to our regular episodes. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time. Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50k or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.